Okay. Well, it's been a while.
We're live?
We're
It's been
live.
a while, John. It's been a long while.
Yeah.
2 months?
2 or 3, I think. Well, we didn't do December. We didn't do January. Did we do November? I'm not even sure if we got that
Yeah, I
far.
think we did November, but this
Okay.
is pretty late in February, so it's getting close to 3 months. That's for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I hope everyone's well and ready to get back into live stream.
Right. We're doing something a little bit different today. It's not sort of
Yeah.
grammar based in the same way as the usual presentations and things. But please, if you've got questions that are relating to grammar topics or anything that's not part of the main presentation, just go right ahead and ask it in the live stream, because we're happy to try and accommodate your own questions if you have them.
Yeah. So we'll try to get to some of those questions at the second half of our presentation. So let's dive in, John.
Okay.
On slide 2, we can talk a little bit about today's topic, metaphor.
Yeah.
So I've been asked many times, what exactly is a metaphor? Because I think there are a few different applications of this term. In linguistics, we talk about it a little bit differently than we do in we're
In the language
than we do
teaching.
in literature. Yeah.
Or in the language
Okay.
teaching. Yeah, in literature as well. Yeah. Yeah. Slightly different
So
meaning.
right. So I've copied the Oxford Dictionary's definition. Okay. And we can read that. So, John, can you move your cursor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Don't worry about that. I had it set up, John, so that I could read it a certain way. But
Okey-dokey.
anyway. Okay. So, they say that it's a word or phrase used to describe somebody or something else, so not with that exact thing, in a way that's different from its normal use, in order to show that the two things have the same qualities and to make the description more powerful.
Okay.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well,
what exactly does that mean?
It does mean that the language that we're seeing doesn't apply directly to what is being said.
Right.
So somebody in Quora recently gave the example of, or was asking about, putting your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And the person who says that isn't talking about actual eggs and actual baskets.
Right.
They're
So
applying.
that's where we get to a word or phrase used to describe somebody or something else.
Right.
So the normal use is eggs in a basket, but we're not talking about eggs in a basket.
We're not.
But we're comparing it to another situation that has the same qualities as having your eggs in one basket.
Right. There's some kind of connection. So if you're putting all the money you've got into one gamble or one risky thing, that's like putting your eggs in one basket. If you put all your eggs in one basket, what's going to happen if the basket falls? What's going to happen if there's an accident?
All the eggs will break and you have nothing left.
You'll have nothing. So if you do that with your money,
it's the same thing.
You'd be left with
nothing left.
Or you put all your hopes on one girlfriend. or boyfriend or whatever.
Are
And then
you saying that we should be polygamous, John, and have lots
not
of
exactly,
girlfriends?
but I do remember my brother's disappointment when his girlfriend left him. You know, he said,
Yeah.
he actually said, I put all my eggs in one basket there, John. He said it, you know, and they'd been together since they were children. You know, they'd been childhood sweethearts, and she broke up with him eventually. You know, so it must have been very hard because all his hopes and expectations were fixated on that one thing, and when that one thing was gone, everything was gone.
There was nothing left.
Just
That's
like
it.
all your eggs in one basket. If that basket falls, you're left with nothing. So that's the way it works. I've said here also that it tends to mean figurative language. I should say maybe often means figurative language as opposed to literal language. Well, it is figurative. Eggs in one basket is literal, but we're not using it in the literal sense. We're using it figuratively. I'll take the often out again because I do think it really is.
It's always, yeah.
It's not a literal use of eggs in a basket.
That's it. Let's do an experiment, John, to show people exactly what we're talking about here, because I think we can get mixed up with the linguistic meaning applying to vocabulary items and the literary meaning used in poetry and literature. They're very similar, but metaphors a little bit different in linguistics. So, John, close your eyes, okay?
I
want you to close your eyes
and
imagine an apple.
Okay, got it.
Now, imagine a mountain.
Got it.
Okay, open your eyes. Now, do you think, John, that if we could magically take those images out of your head, I would recognize them and most of the world would recognize your imaginary apple as an apple?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm seeing an apple.
It was red, right? Your apple was red. It had a little shiny piece on it with a little stem, I'm sure.
Yep.
What about your mountain? Was it a mountain like with a peak?
I was actually quite involved with a mountain today in a certain way, and it was a peak, and it came up with a slope from behind, but it had snow on the top in the way that a mountain would. It had a tree line lower down, so I think a lot of people would think of that.
I would recognize that as a mountain. All right, John, here we go again. Close your eyes. Imagine cold. Now, imagine anger. Okay, you can open your eyes.
Okay. Cold and anger. Okay, let's
What did you imagine for cold?
An Eskimo.
Is there a cold?
I mean, I have
Not
to.
like an apple.
I have to find some kind of way of representing cold in a visual, physical way, because cold in itself doesn't have any physical reality.
It doesn't have a concrete
it's not
object.
You can't visualize it in that kind of way.
Right. So I might not recognize your cold.
Yeah, I mean, you might see my Eskimo dressed up in a lot of clothes and think, oh, you mean warm because that person's well wrapped up.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes metaphors are universal, like the apple is a concrete thing. Cold, we're going to imagine all kinds of stuff. But probably if I ask you to imagine the future, you're going to be going forward, right?
Future, in most cultures, I think we've talked about this, haven't we? In nearly all cultures, future is in front of you. You're going into the future. I like walking down a road in nearly all cultures, although there are
That's a universal metaphor. The road
Mm,
as time.
more or less, or
Okay.
with very, very few exceptions. Yeah, yeah.
There, the very few exceptions. I think in cultures that live in a civilization, it holds true. At least I don't think anyone has found any other ones. There is an exception. There are a couple of cultures on Earth. They're not living in civilized areas who imagine that the past is in front of you and the future is behind you.
Yeah, because you can see the past, but you can't see the
The
future. So they
future.
sing it, they're
But you know
conceptualizing it in a
what?
different way.
They still have the metaphor of the road. They just have a different direction.
In a
That's
sense,
all.
yes, yes, yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about how students can figure out things like all your eggs in one basket,
Yeah.
with some metaphors that we've got here. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are we going to do with these metaphors? The first one, if you can come to slide 3, John,
Uh-huh.
is getting on his high horse. Okay. So,
Right.
John and I are going to read this dialogue to give you some context. But first, what we want you to do is imagine it. Now, this image might help you imagine it a little bit. Here's a guy on a high horse. What does
Mm.
he make you think of? What does this guy represent? Is it positive? Is it negative? Ironic? What kinds of things can you think of?
Mm.
So keep that in mind while we read the dialogue. So you're A, John.
Oh, so I was talking to Peter, and he wants us to change the packaging design.
What was wrong with the old design?
He doesn't like the colours. He told me that it has to be ready by Friday, or he'll take us off the team.
He can't do that. He's not the boss. Oh, he's always getting on his high horse and giving orders.
Right.
Okay.
So we can
So,
imagine this high horse, this person on a high up on a horse. I mean,
right.
the first, we would have to kind of something called a transferred epithet, that the adjective high, it's not that the horse is high, it's not that like the horse is halfway up a mountainside, but he's high up on his horse. It's what we call a transferred epithet, where the adjective actually applies to the person on the horse in this case, not to the horse itself. But yeah, you've got this person up there just like that statue shows. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how was our tone? You've got to think about the context and how the people are using it. What was the emotion? When I said, he's not the boss, he's always getting on his high horse. What was my emotion? I was kind of angry.
Yeah, there's a sense of indignation that, like, what does he
Yeah,
think he's
like,
doing? He can't, that's not right. He's on his high horse.
yeah.
And so it's critical. The tone is critical. So it's not a positive tone. It's not a neutral tone. It's actually negative, isn't it? If somebody's on their
It's
high horse,
extremely negative.
you're saying
Yeah.
something negative about them.
And now, can we say, is the word or the phrase universal? Do most cultures in the world relate to this idea? Well, where are figures of authority usually in your culture? Quite often we have kings and queens up on chairs. We have statues that are supposed to be some famous politician up on a base, on a pedestal. So if somebody's getting on their high horse, they're assuming authority, aren't they? It could be right. It could be rightfully their authority, or they could simply be assuming it, right?
But you're right, this idea of being high. I mean, in Japanese, for example, it's right there in the language every single time you talk to somebody, really. For example, give something would be if you're giving it to somebody, you're giving it up. You're giving it upwards
Yes.
to somebody because you're showing them respect. And they're giving it downwards to you because you're placing yourself in a humble position compared to the person who's giving you whatever it might be. Just out of politeness. That's the whole way the whole language works. Up means higher status and down means lower status. That's pretty universal. So the
I
idea,
would think so. Yeah.
I think probably the idea of somebody on their high horse is like they're putting themselves in a superior position.
Whether they deserve it or not.
And in this case, he's not the boss.
No, he's not. So he doesn't deserve it.
He doesn't have the right to get up on that high horse of his and tell us what
he
to
doesn't.
do. Who does he
And
think he is?
that's why my character was so indignant. All right.
Right.
Let's go to slide 4 and see if we can continue. Now the story is the same. It's Peter and this crazy boss and the other person. Now our next one is we're at a crossroads. Okay. So imagine it. What is a crossroads? You come to a place where you got to go left or right. Okay. So it's decision-making time. Now let's read the dialogue and see what happens there. Okay, so I'm B, John. What does Peter think of the new design? Does he like the colors I chose?
No, he doesn't like it at all. He wants us to change the colors again.
Well, I'm afraid we're at a crossroads then. I've been working day and night on this, and I think it's great.
Well, I agree with you, but what can we do?
Right. Okay, we're at a crossroads. So, again, what was the emotion of the person who used the expression?
Well,
I'm no more toleration.
yeah.
He's got to go. He's got to either come with me or I go that way and he goes that way.
Well, exactly. A crossroads implies that you've got to choose, you've got to make a choice here about which way to go. You're at a crossroads. And the way that the language is shaping up here, I'm afraid we're at a crossroads. So it's not like a good thing then, is it? And,
No.
But what can we do? I mean, it's all suggesting, we don't really want to have to make this choice particularly, but we're in a situation where we have to, at a crossroads. I mean, he thinks one thing,
Right.
we think something else. We're going to have to we're either going to say, hey, Peter, we don't
We're
care.
done with you.
We're done with you. We don't care what you think. We're going our own way. Or, okay, we're just going to shut up and do it your way for now. So we're at a
Right.
crossroads.
So it's a difficult decision,
Right.
right? At a crossroads is a difficult decision. All right, let's continue and find out what happens with Peter and his colleague.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so come to slide 5.
Right.
Now we've got somebody has had a change of heart. This is kind of like a double metaphor. You need 2 steps here. First, you have to think about a heart.
Right.
I think most cultures, I think this is pretty universal. Hearts are emotion. A heart represents some kind of emotion.
Yeah.
Something passionate. It could be love, like on Valentine's cards and things.
Yeah.
It could be love. But I think it's also passion, some hot-blooded something, right?
I think for many cultures, the heart is, as you put it there, the seat of the emotions, whereas we think of the brain as being logical and reasoning. The heart, as the French say, le cœur a ses raisons dont la raison ne sait rien. The heart has its reasons that reason knows nothing of. In other words, the heart does things for reasons that the head doesn't know about, and so on. So I think certainly in most of the cultures that I'm familiar with, the heart has that kind of symbolical value. Yeah. So we'll go with that.
Okay.
We've got the idea that.
So if we consider the heart being emotion,
right,
then a change of heart is changing emotion. You're changing from sad to happy, or
for example,
for example, comedy and tragedy.
Yeah.
So some emotion that you felt yesterday is going to be the opposite today. Or maybe not the opposite, but getting close to the
something
opposite.
Different, something quite clearly different. And it may not be happy and sad. It could be angry and pleased, or it could be any kind of change of emotion or feelings, a change of heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, yes, I'm B. Okay. Have you spoken to Peter today?
Yes, I have, and I have good news.
Really? Tell me.
Well, it seems Peter's had a change of heart. He says he likes the design now.
Ah, well, I'm glad, but I don't understand what was wrong with it in the first place. Okay. So I'm still indignant from him getting on the high horse. So we can ignore my last statement. We're trying to figure out what this means. So we've imagined it. We've got the context.
The context is it's telling you that the context is telling you that it's good news. So that's the first thing. You'd look at that and say, oh yeah, it's good news. So a change of heart is a good thing in this case. Before he didn't like the design, and now he likes it. So, woof. We're off the hook.
We've got to be careful there, because it could be the total opposite.
It could be the opposite.
We could say, if Peter liked it at the beginning and now he's had a change of heart, that means now he doesn't like it. So
it could be the other way around.
You've got to really pay attention to the context.
Yeah,
for change of heart
would be important there. Can I just make a little point here? I mean, what we're doing here, we've given you sort of, imagine it, context, tone, positive, negative, and is it universal? But really, can you see how we're jumping around here? We're not going through this as a kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 checklist. We're saying, oh, this one, whichever one we can get a handle on, whichever one grabs us.
You.
Yeah, and whichever one we can grab in order to get some kind of handle on this and understand it. So it's not like you have to go through this as a list in a systematic way. You're just picking
not
up
at all.
Clues from these things in whatever order they occur to you. There's no particular order here. We put it in an order because we have to. But
let's hope context is first.
Yeah.
And this is something for any of you who write in questions on Facebook or Quora. Please give us context, because if you ask me, what does change of heart mean? My answer to you could be about 3 pages, because it depends on the context entirely. Yeah. If it starts good, change of heart is bad. If it starts bad, change of heart is good. If it starts happy, change of heart is sad, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So you really need to pay attention to context.
Yep.
And try to imagine it, because if you remember back at the beginning of this live stream when I asked John to imagine an apple, that's what this is. I'm giving you an apple and telling you, to me, that apple signifies solving world hunger. For example, some real strange big concept. Maybe I want to use an apple as my symbol for my charity organization that's going to feed the world. That's my symbol. And that's what happens in poetry. We have to take the poet's symbols, we have to take the poet's metaphors and try to imagine them. When a poet tells you that the forest is yellow, you should be thinking that it's probably autumn.
Quite likely.
And then if the poet tells you that, oh, it was tiring to walk in the yellow forest, maybe the poet himself is in the autumn of his years. He's getting older. So you got to just really take, like John says, take these thoughts as they come. You don't need to systematically think about them.
Yeah, whatever works, works.
Whatever works. All right, well, let's find out what happens with Peter and his team colleague and this design. So come to slide 6, John. And now what we've got is it's all water under the bridge.
Right.
What on earth could that mean? Water under the bridge. Here's our image.
Okay.
You've got water. It's going under a bridge.
Right.
Is it the same water at any point in time?
Once the water's gone, it's gone, hasn't it? I mean, the water goes under the bridge, and that's that. Then the next water comes, and the water just
It's
keeps
gone.
on.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay. All right. Let's see what happens here. You are A, John.
Peter's told me that we're now in charge of all packaging design.
Really? First, he doesn't like our designs, and now we're in charge?
Yep. He said it's all water under the bridge. We seem to be back in his good books.
So we just forget about it and move on.
Oh, that would be the smart thing to do.
Right.
So we've got the image, we've seen this bridge and the water going underneath it, but how does it connect to this situation? Well, the first thing is when we're talking about the context, he says that we're in charge. So things have changed. This change of heart that he had before, he's now putting us in charge of everything. First he doesn't like us, and now we're in charge. So the previous situation is water under the bridge. The previous situation is something we should forget about and move forward.
It's
so we had a
gone.
little bit of a fight or a struggle with Peter, a disagreement. But now he says everything's okay, everything's fine now. And I'm actually making you people kind of more responsible for things than you were before. So it's working out okay, it's working out good for us. So we forget about the problems that we had in the past, and we'll move on.
And we'll move on, just like new water keeps coming under the bridge, new ideas, new situations.
And you don't hang on to the bit of water that's gone. It's all just flowing downstream, and the water that's gone is finished. It's past. It's over.
It's almost a little bit of advice, isn't it?
Kind of.
You know, we should think of a lot of things as water under the bridge. It's gone.
And of course, we've got another little metaphor here
We have another one.
His good books.
Now, a funny thing happened, John, when I was writing these dialogues. I was really focused on the metaphors I was using, And I kept using more metaphors. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to leave this one in.
Right.
And I think we can talk about this one as well. So we're in his good books. Let's see if we can think about it. Let's imagine it. What's a good book?
Well, for me, the first obvious thing to do that out of that list, I'd pick positive and negative, and it's obviously good. It's positive. It says
It's a positive thing.
His good books. So this is a good thing.
Good.
To be in somebody's good books is obviously a good thing. You can't question that. That's clear. So
that's clear.
The positive negative spectrum here is very useful.
And very obvious.
And very obvious in this case, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what comes to my mind, all right, now, I don't know if you're going to go down the same path as I am. Sometimes we imagine the origins of these things, and it's completely different from another person. But this is what I think of.
Mm-hmm.
There's now, I was quite influenced by Christianity as a child because I was brought up with descendants of Europeans, and that's just the way the world works. So I know I could be religious, I might not be religious. That's not important. What's important is the influence it had on my life. And I know all about that big guy that sits up in the sky with some books.
It's the good book. The Bible is the good book. And that's where this question of universality comes in, doesn't it?
I think so. I think most cultures, I know all cultures, have a religious figure that is up, definitely. Okay, your religious figure is up. And they're watching you to see if you do good things or bad things. And every time you do a good thing, you get written down. Oh, Veronica gave some money to a poor person yesterday. Oh, Veronica walked by a homeless person yesterday. That's the bad book. And the good book and the bad book. And, like these stories from our childhood, from our religion,
it's a little
from our
bit
fairy tales, they're all there.
A little bit limited to Christian culture and may not be quite so accessible to people from a different culture. But the idea that they have a good book and you write down all the good things in the good book, and they have a bad book.
Right.
It's not that difficult to grab the idea, is it? So,
no.
Look, we've given you here some examples. Nothing's come into the chat today. Sometimes we get lots of things in the chat and sometimes we don't get much. Are there any specific metaphors or similes or anything like that you'd like to put into the chat and get us talking about? Go ahead if there are.
Let's go to slide 7, John.
Because we did get one, didn't we? And it disappeared. It disappeared once the chat started. I don't know what happens, but if you put things in the chat before the chat starts, they tend to disappear. It's some kind of glitch in the YouTube system. But we did have a question saying, how would you say ir como pollo sin cabeza? Now that's literally go like a chicken without a head. And
it's that would be in the Spanish language,
right? In
and
English,
as you
we'd say
it's. So hang on, I've got it right here, John.
Oh,
you don't
got
need
it. Okay,
I've got it. I just wanted to go through it first.
Sure.
So
okay.
So let's write the literal translation.
Okay.
Okay. So go like a chicken without a head.
Okay, where are you putting that now?
You can write that.
Okay, yeah. So go like a chicken without a head. Go or to go.
Well, go, I think. To go.
To go, it's the
So
infinitive, isn't it? To go
now,
like a chicken without a head. Well, that's not how
but
we'd say it
just
in
wait.
English. It's quite close,
No,
actually, in this case. It's quite close.
well, I think what we can do here is you take the expression, metaphor, figurative thing from your language, translate it directly. Nothing wrong with that. You know it's temporary. This isn't going to be the final product. Okay. So we translate it literally so that you can get a sense of it and everybody in the room is on the same page.
Mm.
Now, let's think about it. What does that make you think of? So, a chicken without a head. Where do you see a chicken without a head?
Somebody would have to cut it off.
On the farm when they're cutting off the chickens' heads. I don't know, John, have you ever been present while someone slaughtered a chicken?
I have.
It's horrible.
They actually
So
do
they
move around.
jump around
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
and then they die. Yeah. So I think everybody can get the image.
Right.
So what is it? What are we trying to say?
You wouldn't be able to get the exact expression, would you? I mean,
No,
you
you
wouldn't be able to guess
You would
that.
have to. You would have to look it up. Google Translate is not too bad today. It might give you a relatively good.
Should we try it? Should we give it a whirl?
Yeah, let's give it a whirl. Let's see what they say. So before we do that, just tell everyone. In English, we say running around like a chicken with its head cut off. So it means that you're going crazy and you have absolutely no organization in your crazy busyness.
Right.
Yeah. It's not a good way to be. So, have you got the Google Translate there?
Yeah, and it actually doesn't give us the equivalent English.
Okay.
No, it just says "go like headless chicken," which is pretty poor.
Oh,
it's
no,
not,
that's
It's
terrible.
really not.
There's another one. What's the other the other translator called?
Oh, there are several other
remember.
translation programs. Yeah, but
You
one
might
of them
get one.
work, yeah.
You might get one.
Yeah.
If you don't, just do like the person who wrote this in. I don't think she'll mind me saying her name, Alicia. And ask an English person, what does this mean? Do you have this expression in English?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the English person will give it to you.
Yeah, in fact,
So-
between European languages, there are very often quite similar ones, and even
Yeah.
outside Europe, proverbs seem to those kinds of expressions or those kinds of metaphorical expressions do seem to spread fairly quickly around the world, so that I don't know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. In English, in Japanese, if you go to a town, obey the rules of the town.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's pretty close, isn't it?
And yeah, a lot of, especially like proverbs, old little pieces of advice or wisdom from the past.
Yeah.
My great grandmother would have given someone advice in the same way as a Japanese descendants. Like, we're all human beings. We're all going to give the same type of advice. We will use different words, and we might use different grammar constructions, but we have the same concept. We can all close our eyes and imagine love.
Yeah.
Right?
But
we can all do that.
But at the same time, this is where this sense of universality that we talked about comes in. It can be different. It does differ somewhat in different cultures. I mean, I'm going to stick with Spanish here. because we've got several Spanish people, I think, watching tonight. If you're not Spanish, just chip in on the chat and tell us
where you're from.
where you
Tell
are
us where
from,
you're from and what kind of
because that'd be nice
metaphors you
for us
use.
to know. We in Spanish, for example, when you love someone, the word that you very often use is te quiero, which really means I want you as well as I love you. It's very difficult to say te quiero, pero te quiero allí por ahí, in your place. I love you, but in your place, over there. No. If you love them, you want them. It's built into the language. It's in the building bricks of the language. Whereas in English, you can say, yeah, I love you, but just I love you over there. All right, I don't necessarily love you.
I love you over
I don't
there.
have to have you clinging on to me all the time. And of course in English we can love
Pizza.
yeah, pizza or cream cakes. You can't love though. You can't really use querer or amar in Spanish for that. Although you could say adoro. You could perhaps say adoro when you're saying, oh, I absolutely adore. Maybe, but even then, basically,
Sorry, John, are you on slide 7?
I actually moved off slide 7 there just to get back to
okay.
this universal question.
Right.
I'm back with the chicken in its head
No,
cut
it's
off.
good because
Here we go.
yeah, and something interesting as well. Just if I can just put this here for a moment. This thing here, now if you take the culture of Europe, this is a heart in English, but all the other languages have it a little bit different, and it is cor, from Latin.
That's a Latin root.
Corazón in Spanish. Coeur in French. Is there an E on that?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. C-O,
I'm not sure.
It's C-O-E-U. I'll do it.
Okay.
Oops, we've gone off.
It's gone.
We've gone. What happened?
What happened to my heart?
What happened? Did I mess things up? I think I might have
I don't
done.
know. It's okay. Don't worry. I'll just put it back here.
Sure.
There you go. Write it again.
Okay. So we got.
Good.
What have we got? We've got cor as a sort of root. Corazón. I can't put in the diacritics very easily.
Yeah, don't worry about the diacritics. Presented a few things. You could love your wife, but you also had to love your country. And by loving your country meant that you loved your queen. And if you were a knight in shining armor, King Arthur and all those guys, well, that's a little too early. But anyways, you would have to be courageous. You would have to have courage and go fight for your queen.
Well,
and then you would come home and you would be in the king's court.
Right.
And your good manners and etiquette would be seen as courtesy. Oops. So all of these words really get connected as well. So even though you might get a little bit away from the metaphor exact as heart being love, you're going to improve your vocabulary. You're going to see all kinds of connections.
Yeah.
And that is what's at the heart of the metaphor, is connecting ideas. Right. And what better way to connect ideas than with words?
Right.
Yeah.
I think this sense
Richard
of
the Lion-Hearted.
Finding,
Was
Richard
he
the Lionheart.
or
Richard the
Lion-Hearted?
Lionheart. A famous Middle Ages English king, meant that he was brave, and so that's connected with courage. And you've got this whole conceptual bringing together of courage, heart, bravery, and you can see it there in Richard the Lionheart. He has courage.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's that kind of
Okay.
thing that it helps you to understand the culture as well. Because as I've said, in
Yeah.
Spanish, you've got, concepts get divided up differently. That
Yeah.
you can't love a cream cake in Spanish, whereas you can love cream cake in English, and you can love someone in English without having to have them kind of
In your space.
in your space all the time. Yeah. So the concepts actually do divide up differently, and we when we were talking about this before, we talked a little bit about synonyms and things like that, didn't we?
Yeah, synonyms. Uh, Synonyms are overrated. How's that?
Well, it's almost correct to
say
say
overrated?
there are no
I don't think
true
they.
synonyms, or very few. I mean, you get these dictionaries that show you synonyms. In other words, where you could have a choice of words in a given context, but not in every context. Only
Right.
only in a given context.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the same way, one word almost never translates into a single word in another language. So people sort of have that idea, well, we talk about, te quiero, for example, in Spanish. Oh, how do they say that in English? You'd have to say, well, it might be, I love you. But what if, can I then use that quiero for saying, quiero un bolígrafo, I love a bolígrafo? No, I love a biro. Well, no, that would be I want. Oh, right. So querer has two words in English, two basic words in English.
Mm-hmm.
And in French, je t'aime would be I love you, but je t'aime bien, which sounds as if, it's more than I love you bien, I love you well. It actually means I like you. Doesn't really mean I love you. So,
So
je
you gotta
t'aime
be
would
careful.
be I love you, but je t'aime bien would be I like you, but I don't love you. So, the way that concepts are divided up in different languages is different. Just as in one language, it's better to think of overlapping circles where in some contexts this word is the right one, even inside the language. Like, te quiero and te amo, I love you and I, what would you say? I adore you, or whatever. But I mean, there are contexts in which you could use either, but there are also going to be contexts in which you would choose one over the other. And so this is quite connected with all of this stuff about metaphor and simile and so on.
Well, a metaphor is a connection. There's an abstract concept that needs to be talked about. The only way I can talk about cold is by using some tangible concepts. Ice cubes, snow, the North Pole, these kinds of things are what's going to come to my mind. And when the same image comes to enough people's minds in a general region, that's going to become more of a universal metaphor. More people are going to understand it. And eventually, it could become so overused that it becomes what we call a cliche. He's as busy as a bee. Well, nobody says that today for fear of being called a hack, right?
It's
you
too
don't want to say,
obvious.
I'm as busy as a bee.
Obvious.
It's been used so much, it's lost its power.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I
Okay.
think that's probably all we need to say about metaphors today, John.
Yeah, unless
We've
unless
got
people have.
two questions. So why don't we jump down to
Sure.
slide 8,
Okie dokie. Uh,
and I'll make it larger, so don't worry about that. Okay,
okay.
there we go. So, the person says, I hear a strange noise in the next room. You could also say, I heard a strange noise. Yeah, one is simple past, one is simple present.
Yeah.
How about I've heard? So now the person is asking us about tense or aspect, really. What aspect can we use the verb hear?
Yeah.
So we've got to think about context as always, and this
This
is another example of context. Okay, so we're using it to talk about perception. I'll see if we can get this so everybody can read it. There we go. So here, when we're talking about sensory perception, English refers that idea in a aspect. Okay,
Yeah.
by aspect I mean simple, continuous, or perfect.
it's
Um,
partly to do with the
other
stative condition of the senses. So you say I smell coffee rather than I am smelling coffee, and
right.
you don't tend to use these in the continuous form. You don't tend to use them so much in there are contexts in which they can be used in the perfect form, but
Yeah.
the simple form is the norm. Let's say it's the default.
Mm-hmm.
The
That's it.
continuous form.
And
I am hearing is possible, but it's going to be used in more restricted, more limited contexts.
and it's not about the perception of hearing. You know,
It's
those perceptions we have: hear, see, smell, taste, feel. Those in English are usually used in a simple aspect. If you use a different aspect, like John says here in the continuous, it's going to be something different. We're not really talking about the perception, the scientific perception of hearing.
we're not talking about hearing in quite the same way. So that an example would be that new worker. Oh yes, I'm hearing good things about him.
Yeah.
And it's
so
not like you
the last little while,
you might have read those good things on a text message or whatever.
But so with continuous, we've always got some kind of time frame.
Yeah.
It began when the guy started working. He's a new worker. And here and there, up to today, there's been little bits of good things about this guy.
Yeah.
So that's why he's hearing it now and then. Another one is a perfect. I've heard recent news.
Right.
We use this when we see people who are following the same news item as we are, some political thing perhaps. Have you heard?
Yeah.
Elon Musk has bought Twitter. So you could say that, I don't know,
Right.
3 or 4 months ago, for example.
Yeah.
Have you heard? So that's not actual hearing. That's more about getting information.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
Take another sense like smell. That's going to be even more unusual because it doesn't have those more metaphorical meanings of like getting information. So you say, I smell coffee. You wouldn't normally say I am
I'm
smelling
not
coffee
smelling
or I have
coffee.
smelled coffee. It's going to be pretty unusual finding contexts for that. Not that there aren't
Here's
any, and not that it's
No,
grammatically
no,
wrong.
there's always going to be something. For example, um, you could say, "Do you smell that very strange odor?"
Mm,
Yes. Where is it coming from? I don't know. I've been smelling this for a few days
right,
now. Because
right.
smell does that. Smell comes up and
Yeah,
then it's gone.
it's
And then it comes up again and it's gone. So, yeah, there's always going to be a situation where you can use these really weird forms,
but they're not
but,
they're not
you
the
know,
default. They're less likely to
it's not
come
the
up.
default, and students really need to focus on the default. Worry about the extra special cases when you're at an advanced
So let's
stage.
get to this specific example. I mean, I've heard sounds odd here. We're agreed
Yeah,
on that. It doesn't sound right
yeah.
because we've got the context, and the context is, I heard here or I heard. Okay, so you're saying to the person, "Hey, look, it's something that's going on. It happened just a minute ago, or it's happening now." Whereas "I've heard" takes it out of the present time frame and just puts it more in the sense of my present my part of my experience as a human being is that at some time I have heard.
Hmm.
I have heard a
Yeah.
noise, and that is just not fitting with this context. The context
No,
that we're
no, no.
looking at requires a situation where right now, or maybe at some very time in the very recent past, I hear it now, or I heard a strange noise. And
Hmm.
if you listen, you may hear it too. But if you say I've heard a strange noise in the next room, people say, "Well, what was that? When did that happen? Was it 10 years ago, 5 years
Yeah,
ago,
yeah.
last week?"
It's very
And
strange.
I've heard just it says that now I am somebody who has had in his life at some time the experience of hearing a strange noise in the next room, and that is just not what we want to say.
No,
Therefore, we wouldn't
no.
say it in this case.
All right. Okay, let's look at
The next one.
number 9 then. Okay, I'll fix this up, John.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I've got it here. So there we go. Now, what do we got here? Can you take your cursor away and then
Yeah.
we can read it better?
Sorry.
Can you remove your cursor, John?
Sure,
There,
sure.
okay. So without the internet, our world would very different from what it is today. So here we are comparing the present world, okay, with the situation in which we were living in a virtual world. Okay, if that's the case, it seems to me that only B is the correct answer. Without the internet, our world would
be. Without the internet, our world would be very different from what it is
Well,
today.
it could be seem.
Would have been without the
It
internet.
could seem.
Huh? Well, no, but yeah. I mean, just looking at okay, limiting our choices.
My first instinct is B. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
looking at
any one of those verbs, a linking verb, seem, appear. You could even
let's
say
change that
smell
slightly.
or taste. You could say smell, taste, or hear.
Yeah, so let's limit ourselves and say we're talking about forms of the verb be. We're not talking about other
Right.
verbs. Could we say we would have been living in a different world, or our world, or could we put in here our world would have been? I mean, that doesn't sound. I don't like it all that much, but it doesn't seem. Does it seem wrong to you? It's not wrong.
Yeah, it seems totally wrong. No, it seems wrong.
Yeah, it seems wrong.
Our
Right.
world would be now, not would have been.
Our world would have been very different from what it is. No, but if we had been without the internet, so if you think of without as meaning if we hadn't had the internet, our world would have been. Surely that's correct, isn't it?
Our world would have been very different.
Because
then I wouldn't use from what it is today.
Would have been very different from what. Okay, the question is, you know, it just says without the internet, and without, of course, it could be if we hadn't had, in which case would have been fits.
Works. Yeah.
Or if we didn't, if we didn't have the internet, our world would be.
Would be. Yeah, you just need to match the conditionals. You've got to match there.
But if you're using without, okay, then you're not using either. You're not using a verb form. So, which I would have thought that you could make a case for using both, but that be would be the default. Be would be the usual.
Yeah, yeah. So I think just the thing here is if we hadn't had the internet, our world would have been. That's going to give you a third conditional. Or you could go, if we didn't, if we didn't have blah, 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 then our world would be. That's going to give you a second conditional. That's just following grammar, really. There are reasons for, oh my goodness. There are reasons for this, okay, but we're far too into the live stream to start talking about that.
Too much,
it would take quite a long time. But you know, it does. I think we can safely say as well that we were talking about metaphor at the beginning. We're answering a few grammar questions. Grammar, if you can just stretch your mind a little bit, it is a metaphor, right? Grammar's a metaphor. How else would you say would be, would have been? That's totally abstract. That's such an abstract thing, and you can bet that no other animal on earth thinks of would have been.
No.
The dog doesn't sit there and contemplate what would have been.
The dog only knows what is. I mean, I assume
it's so elevated that most children don't learn the second and third conditionals in their own language. And they don't express it well until at least 8 years old, 8 or 9. So every human being on the face of the planet has the ability, an adult, the ability to imagine this abstract would have been, and all of the conditionals. But it takes some time before we can get our hands around that concept and shape it into some kind of a grammar that makes sense to other people. So in this way, grammar is a metaphor, you know?
Yeah.
Of this is how I describe a conditional situation from the past that is not true and will never be true.
Right.
Without could go either way. So without the internet, our world would be very different. Our world would have been very different.
I mean, your instinct on that is slightly different from mine. It might be relating to the way that I don't know. It could be to do with, you know,
Yeah,
Canadian English versus British English.
maybe.
I feel
But
that
I don't. I really don't like it.
yeah.
Our world would have been.
Without
It's
the
just
internet,
so yesterday to me. Our world would have been.
yeah.
I can't connect that with today.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah.
But
So I think we'll say we'll make it that it is quite a strong preference on your side, and I think that, to be honest, I would use the second conditional there in practice, and I doubt that I would use the third conditional, but I'm a little bit more hesitant than you are to say that it's.
I won't say never. I'll never say never.
Yeah. Well, there are times when we do have to say never. We have sorry, but that is just wrong. But here we are open to a certain amount of debate, and that's something again that I think learners of the language do not always appreciate. That there's no God-given grammar.
No.
Grammar is merely our fumbling attempts to make some sense of the language that we speak and to try to come up with explanations for the way that we speak. So, and of course, there are different grammars. Some people will say that something is always wrong. Well, other people will say, well, yes, but a lot of people do actually say that, and they're not uneducated people. They're educated people
John,
who say these things.
There are different situations as well, right?
Yes, contexts.
If you're sitting in the cafeteria with me talking, I can probably accept pretty much everything you say.
Yeah.
I might pick up a few mistakes if I'm in a teacher's mode.
Right.
Okay. But if you're going to write an essay for me, then I'm going for a different kind of grammar.
You've got to get it right.
This is not my cafeteria grammar. And this is right or wrong. And I'm the professor and I'm right. Sorry.
And I want you to get it right.
Well,
yeah.
I'm willing to have a discussion with students if they disagree with my corrections.
Right.
But you've got to remember that I've probably got a whole lot more experience than you, so you might want to listen up. But when it comes to speaking in the cafeteria or in the park or even on the internet, I'm going to really relax my whatever you call it.
We're going to very, very quickly wind up here. Just a couple of minutes talking about Chat GPT, which somebody asked us about.
Okay.
And
let's do that.
I'm going to show you. I'm just going to jump in here because we haven't got much time. So I created using similar technology to the Chat GPT, and people who don't know it, basically it's AI, it's artificial intelligence creating language. So here we've got John Keats's Ode to a Nightingale, and I say, come on, give me a little book on John Keats's Ode to a Nightingale. So it took about 5 minutes to steal all of this from the internet. John Keats's Ode to a Nightingale is one of the most well-known and beloved poems of the Romantic period. Well, oh wow, I mean, tell me something I don't know. Everybody knows that. And it's not, it's not like, oh, what extraordinary researched information.
Earth-shattering news.
It's good English, it's correct English, but it's not. Written in 1819, the poem is a meditation on mortality and the transience of life. Well, again, yes, that's correct English. It's true, but it's not. It's not even interesting. I mean, it's not even interesting. No. It's just like, okay, tell me something interesting here. It explores themes of love and death, beauty and music. Yeah. It even gives little quotations from the poem. He describes it as the nightingale as singing of summer in full-throated ease. And that creates a vivid image of the nightingale using personification. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's got no. For me, it has no soul. It has
Yeah.
no. It
No
is
heart.
nothing of interest that would make me want to read this. I just think, well, I can. It's. I
It's
would.
bland.
There are yes,
It's
it's bland.
bland.
There are lots of websites. It's not that it's giving me bad information, although that's another thing to look at. That it could. I haven't picked out particularly any bad information here, but you can find cases where this kind of AI will come up with something from the internet and get the wrong idea. It will simply give you bad information, so that can happen as well.
Yeah.
So I would say we've got a long way to go before this starts to make a real impact on the way
Yeah.
we learn language and the way that we approach language. Although I do think it's a wake-up call for teachers, because it's pretty obvious that the lazy student can use this for cheating.
Yeah.
So that's about
Well,
all I can say for it, really.
just to finish up with that, John, I was listening to a podcast where two professors were talking about this, and they had set the students a task where three of them were to hand in essays written by the Chat GPT,
Uh-huh.
and the other three wrote their own essays.
Okay.
And these are postgraduate students.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they're high up there.
Right.
And the professors were able to say which was the student, which was the AI,
I would
in seconds.
I would hope
In
so.
seconds.
Yes, I would hope so. I mean, it might be more difficult at undergraduate level but if you're looking at advanced students, you're expecting them to have some sort of originality in what they say, not just to be
Yes.
saying, oh, anybody could say that, anybody could come up with that.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, Chat GPT is really, it's not cutting it yet, but I can imagine
Not
that in a
yet,
few
no.
years' time,
It will. It will.
it will be surprising people. Yeah.
What you showed us there with your table of contents.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't
I mean,
it?
that's kind of interesting. I wouldn't mind using it for that.
Kind of having a
If I
template.
wanted
Yeah.
to write, if I wanted to write a grammar book or something,
Yeah.
I could
yeah.
ask Chat GPT, okay, what topics should I talk about?
Right. It would.
And giving me a table of contents would be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be okay. And then
Yeah.
I could fill it in.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I think we're going to leave you there, people, and
All right.
and say goodbye.
Yeah. It was very nice. So we'll see you next time, folks.
Yep.
Hopefully sometime in March,
Yeah.
closer to Easter.
I've got some
closer to-
traveling. I've got some traveling over the next few months. It's going to be difficult. I may not be able to
Actually,
do
yeah, I have to go away
everything.
as well.
We've
not.
got plans and things that may make it difficult, but we'll do our best to be back with you when we can. And so,
All right. Take
we'll-
care,
we'll
and
s-
we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Are we done?
Just a minute now. There we go. Yes, we are done now.